Hi guys, in this video I'm going to go over two things that are a little bit of review, but it's stuff that we all need a little bit more practice with. So we're going to be practicing graphing linear inequalities, but if you notice on your page, none of these inequalities are in slope-intercept form. None of them are in the form y is less than or greater than mx plus b. And so it's that mx plus b that we're really looking for, or looking to get our equations into so that we can eventually graph them. So we're going to go through kind of two different items in this video. The first, we're just going to practice getting the equation into slope-intercept form. After that, we're going to practice getting them into slope-intercept form and then graphing them on a coordinate plane. So this second piece will be a practice of what we did both on Monday and today in this first half. So we're going to start off first getting inequalities into slope-intercept form. So as a reminder, I want to get that y by itself on one side, everything else on the other. So I'm going to go through the first one with you, and then you'll have some options for where you can go from there. So for this first one, I'm trying to get y by itself. I'm going to circle the y value, and I'm going to look for what is being added or subtracted from that y value. So what is the term or the number that is being added or subtracted? And really, this term is always going to have an x with it. It's always going to have an x with it. So I want to get rid of this x. There's a plus sign in between the y and the x. So to get rid of that, because it's positive, I'm going to subtract x from both sides. Okay. When I do that, the x is over here. X minus x leaves me with 0x. They're going to cancel out. I'm going to carry down this 3y. Because I didn't add multiply or divide by a negative number, I'm not going to change my inequality sign. It's going to stay exactly the same. This little flow chart off to the side, I'll leave this up on the screen while we're doing these, but just a set of questions to ask yourself. So you're going to start by asking, did you divide by a negative number? And if your answer is yes, then your inequality sign is going to switch directions. If your answer is no, you're going to ask yourself, did you multiply by a negative number? If your answer to that question is yes, your inequality sign will switch directions. If your answer is no, your inequality sign stays the same. So we're going to kind of go through this at every step that we do. Over on this side of our inequality, I've got a negative 9 and a negative x. They're not like terms, so I'm going to just write them out as they are. I'm going to put the x first out in front. So I'll have a negative x minus 9. Okay. Next step, I've got this 3 in front of my y. My y is still not by itself. Because that 3 is being multiplied with y, I'm going to divide my whole inequality by 3. When I do that, my 3's are going to cancel out. I'm just going to be left with y. Looking at my sign, I'm going to go through this. Did I divide by a negative number? I did divide, but my number 3 was positive, so my answer to that is no. Did I multiply by a negative number? Nope, I divided by a positive 3. So my inequality sign will stay the same, facing this way. Over on this side, I'm going to put a 1 in front of my x. So I've got a negative, I'm going to bring this out as a fraction, so I'll have a negative 1/3 x. And then minus 9 divided by 3 will give me a 3. And that'll be my last step. Now my inequality matches this form. I've got y on one side, everything else on the other. Okay. At this point, you have two options, and I'll put them out in front so that you can read them. I've got two options for what you can do. Option 1. If you're not feeling very good with this, you feel like you need a couple more examples, you can keep watching this video for a couple more examples, and I'll go through about 2 or 3 more. Option number 2, if you're feeling pretty confident, like you know how to do this, you remember it from before break, you're going to pause and work through these next 10 problems. So you're going to stop at problem number 10, right at the bottom. You're going to pause and work through these problems on your own. And after you've finished, you're going to fast forward the video, so you're going to click ahead to the next question mark, and you're going to check your answers by entering them in. So that's option number 2. If you're feeling pretty confident, go ahead and make that decision now. Okay, if you're going to continue watching, we're going to look at number 2 next. Again, we're trying to get our inequality into slope-intercept form. I'm going to leave my question for switching my sign off to the side. I want to get y by itself, so I'm going to circle y. And I'm going to draw that wall. I didn't do that for the last one, but for this one I'm going to draw a wall so that I remember to keep those sides separate. So on the same side as y, I want to look for the term that has a plus or a minus in between that term and my y value. In this case, here's my minus. Over here is y. On the other side is my x. Since this x is a positive value, I can put a plus sign in front of it to remind me. To get rid of that x, I'm going to subtract x from both sides. When I do that, a positive x minus x will give me 0x. They'll cancel out. I'm going to bring down this 4y and the negative that's right in front of it. So I'll have a negative 4y. Over here to check my sign, did I divide by a negative number? No, I subtracted x. Did I multiply by a negative number? No, I subtracted x. So my inequality sign will stay the same. I'm going to copy it down. Greater than or equal to. Over on this side, these two terms are not like terms, so I'm going to carry them, bring them down exactly as they are. I've got a negative x, and I have a positive 20. Okay, last step, still trying to get y by itself. Next to this y is a negative 4. The two are being multiplied together. So to get rid of that negative 4, I'm going to divide by a negative 4. Every single term on both sides. Over here, negative 4 divided by negative 4 is just 1. Both the negative and the 4 will cancel, leaving me with y. Checking my sign, did I divide by a negative number? Yes, I divided by a negative 4, so my inequality sign has to switch directions. It was greater than or equal to, now it's going to be less than or equal to. I'm going to do the same thing I did with the last one where I put a 1 in front of that x. Negative 1 divided by a negative 4 is going to leave me with a negative divided by a negative, gives me a positive 1 over 4. And then I'm going to have my x right next to it. Over here, 20 divided by 4 gives me 5. And a positive divided by a negative will leave me with a negative. And so that'll be my inequality in slope-intercept form. Let's do another one. So looking at number 3, I'm trying to get y by itself, so I'm going to circle my y value, draw my wall. Over here, I'm looking for the term on this side with my y, where there's a minus or a plus in between the y and that term. So I see my 3y over here, a minus. On the other side, I have this 10x. So to get rid of that 10x, because it's a positive 10x, I'm going to subtract 10x from both sides. When I do that, 10x minus 10x is 0x, so it's going to cancel out. And I'm going to bring down that whole 3y and the negative that's out in front. Looking at my sign, did I divide by a negative number? Nope. Did I multiply by a negative number? No. So in that case, my inequality sign will stay the same. So I'm going to bring it down. It's a less than sign. Over here, One of these terms has an x, the other one does not. So I'm going to write it out exactly as it is. I've got a negative 10x and a minus 15. Okay, last step, still trying to get y by itself. Next to it, there's a negative 3. Because they're being multiplied together, to get rid of that negative 3, I'm going to divide every term by a negative 3. When I do that, this set of negative 3's is going to cancel out. I'll be left with y. Looking at my sign, did I divide by a negative number? Yes, I divided by a negative 3. So my inequality sign has to switch directions. It'll become a greater than sign. Over here, just looking at my signs, I've got a negative divided by a negative. That will leave me with a positive number. And I'm going to leave these two as a fraction, exactly as they are, since 3 doesn't go into 10. So I've got 10 divided by 3x. Oops, this should be a negative. Over here, I have a negative divided by a negative. That gives me a positive. And 3 goes into 15 5 times. So my y-intercept form, or my slope-intercept form, should look like this in the end. Okay. Take a couple minutes to yourself, and I want you to do these next 3 on your own. You can check your answers once you get there. Your answers to those first 3, this is the work that you should have. Go ahead and pause to finish the last 4. If you got a bunch of these wrong, or you didn't understand why you got them wrong, please call me over now so that I can help you through 1 or 2 of the next couple. Check your work to these last 4. If you missed any of these problems, please call me over and let me know, and I can help you walk through your work, checking your errors. You want to make sure that you understand all 10 of these before you move on to the next section. Okay, and with that, let's move on to that next page. Okay. So there are a couple of directions that you want to follow. So you are now graphing the inequalities. For every single problem, I've marked in what you need to do first, and then what to do second. So you're always going to start by getting your equation, or your inequality, into slope-intercept form. So just like before, I'm trying to get y by itself. To do that, I'm looking for what is being added or subtracted to that y. Where is there plus or a minus sign separating a number or a term from y? And this 6x is separated by y by this minus sign. Because it's a positive 6x, though, I'm going to subtract 6x from both sides. When I do that, those 6x's are going to cancel out. I've got this 5y, and it has a negative in front of it, so I'm going to bring that negative with it. When I ask myself, should I change signs? Did I divide by a negative number? No. Did I multiply by a negative number? No. So therefore, my inequality sign will stay the same. So it's still going to be greater than. Then I've got this negative 6x and a minus 20. I'm going to just bring them down just like they are. Still trying to get y by itself. Next to the y is a negative 5. These two numbers are being multiplied together, so to get rid of that negative 5, I'm going to have to divide by a negative 5. Divide by negative 5. Divide by negative 5. Okay. When I do that, my negative 5's are going to cancel. I'm going to be left with just a y. Did I divide by a negative number to see if my sign switches? Yes, I did. I divided by a negative 5. So my inequality sign has to switch directions. Now it's a less than. A positive divided by a negative, a negative divided by a negative will leave me with a positive. And I'm going to write this as a fraction since 5 doesn't go into 6. 6 over 5x. A negative divided by a negative will leave me with a positive. 20 divided by 5 will give me 4. Okay, so I just did my first step. I got my inequality into slope-intercept form. Next, I'm going to graph it. So to do that, I'm going to find first my slope and my y-intercept. In this case, my slope is the 6 over 5, and my y-intercept is 4. So I'm going to plot some points, starting with my y-intercept. I'm going to go up 4 and plot a point. To graph my slope, normally I would go up 6 and to the right, but I run out of room over here. So instead I'm going to go in the other direction. I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to go to the left 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to plot a point. Okay. I can't go in the other direction anymore. I've run out of space on my graph, so I'm done plotting those main 2 points. Now I'm going to take a look at that note card that we made last time in class to ask myself about my line. With this inequality sign, a less than sign, would my line be solid or would it be dashed? Hopefully you said dashed, because it doesn't have that line underneath. We're going to have a dashed line to connect our 2 points. A dashed line because there isn't a line underneath. If I have a less than sign, would I be shading up on my y-axis or down on my y-axis if I have a less than sign? Good, I should be shading down since it's less than. So I'm going to shade this whole portion of my graph over here. And that is it. Now I'm done. Similar to the last set of problems, you have 2 options. If you feel like you need a couple more examples, you can keep watching. And I'll go through 2 more problems before you can do some on your own. If you feel like you're good to go and you want to work through the problems on your own, see how you do, you can go ahead and pause the video, or it'll pause for you in just a second, and you can fast forward to the next question mark to check your answers. So go ahead and make that decision now. Okay, I'm going to keep going, working through some examples. We're going to look at number 12 next. So with number 12, to graph this, first I have to get my equation or my inequality into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to try to get y by itself. Y by itself. Just like all the other ones, I'm looking for what is separated from my y with a plus sign or a minus sign, and I have this plus sign in between my 2y and my 5x. So I've got to get rid of that 5x term out in front. Because it's a positive 5x, I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. Okay, when I do that, those 5x's are going to cancel out. I'm going to bring down this term, so I have a 2y. When I ask myself about my inequality sign, did I divide by a negative? Nope. Did I multiply by a negative number? Nope. So my inequality sign should stay the same. It's going to stay as greater than or equal to. Over here, these 2 terms are not like terms, so I'm going to leave them as they are. I'm going to put the negative 5x out in front, and then this plus 10, since it's a positive 10 at the end. Last step in getting y by itself. It's got this 2 right next to it that is being multiplied with y. So to get rid of that 2, I'm going to divide every term by 2. When I do that, these 2's will cancel out. I'll be left with just my y. For my sign, did I divide by a negative number? No. Did I multiply by a negative number? No. So the inequality sign stays the same. So it's going to stay as a greater than or equal to. Over here, a negative divided by a positive will leave me with a negative number. And I have 5, 2 can't go into 5, so I'm going to write it as a fraction. 5 over 2. Then I'll have my x. 2 goes into 10 5 times, so I'll have a plus 5 at the end. My equation is now, or my inequality is now in slope-intercept form, so I can graph it. I'm going to start off by finding my slope, finding my y-intercept. In this case, my slope is this negative 5 over 2. My y-intercept is a positive 5. So I'm going to go to that y-intercept on my x-axis. I'm going to go up 5 and plot a point. From there, I have a negative slope, so I'm going to start by going down 5 and to the right 2, and that fits on my graph, so I'm going to plot it. I'm going to keep going in that same direction, down 5 to the right 2. Okay. And after that, my coordinate is going to go off, or my points are going to go off the coordinate plane. Thinking about my note card from Monday, if I've got a greater than or equal to sign, will this line be solid or dashed? Great, it should be a solid line because you have a line underneath your inequality sign. It should be solid. Next, I'm going to ask myself, if I have a greater than or equal to sign, am I going to shade up or down on the y-axis? If it's greater than or equal to. Since it is a greater than sign, we're going to be shading up on the y-axis, which is this half of my graph. Even though it's a little small, we're shading up, not down. That would be this other half of my graph. Okay. Give number 13 a try on your own. Okay. So to get number 13 into slope-intercept form, I'm going to circle my y value. Look for what's in between. Look for that negative or that positive sign in between y and another term. That gives me a hint that I'm getting rid of that 7x. Because 7x is positive, I'm going to subtract it. When I do that, I'm going to carry down the sign of this 3. So I've got a negative 3y. If I look at my flow chart, did I divide by a negative? Nope. Did I multiply by a negative? No. So the inequality sign will stay the same. It'll stay a greater than or equal to. Over here, I'm going to bring these two terms over just as they are. So I've got a negative 7x and a minus 12. Y still isn't by itself. It's got a negative 3 next to it. That's being multiplied with y. To get rid of that negative 3, I'm going to divide every term by negative 3. When I do that, my negative 3's are going to cancel. I'll be left with just a y. If I look at my flow chart for my inequality sign, did I divide by a negative number? Yes, I did. So my inequality sign will switch directions to a less than or equal to. A negative divided by a negative will give me a positive. 3 can't go into 7, so it's going to stay a fraction, 7 over 3x. A negative divided by a negative gives me a positive. 12 divided by 3 will give me 4. Now that my inequality is in slope-intercept form, I'm going to find the slope. I'm going to find the y-intercept. My slope is a 7 over 3, and my y-intercept is a positive 4. So I'm going to start by going to that y-intercept, going up 4, and plotting my point. If I try to go up and to the right, up 7, it doesn't work. I get off of my graph, so I've got to go in the other direction. I'm going to start by going down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now to the left 3. 1, 2, 3. If I try to do that again, I'm going to go off my graph, so these are my 2 points. Now I have to figure out, is my line going to be solid or dashed? Since my inequality sign has a line underneath, I'm looking paying attention to this line in particular, that means that my line is going to be solid when I connect those 2 points. My last question is, if I have a less than or equal to sign, am I going to shade up or shade down? Because it is less than, I'm going to shade down on my y-axis, which will shade this whole part of my graph. Okay, and that's it. Go ahead and give the last couple problems a try. You can check your work at the next question mark. Check your graph for number 14. For number 15. And for number 16. For the last 4, go ahead and pause, and we'll check them at the next question mark. Check number 17. Make sure you got the right shading, the right dashing. Number 18. Number 19. And number 20. Okay. Once you're done, you're going to go to your agenda and you're going to check and see what's up next. Great job.